Thanks for joining our Higher Ed College Bound with a Disability Transition webinar. I am Carrie Basas. I'm the Director of the Governor's Office of the Education Ombuds, and I'm joined today by Heather Jeng and Heather Blakely and Atty Cleworth, and they will give brief introductions of themselves, and we will have a very interactive day today. We have a few resources to share, but mostly it won't be a set of PowerPoint slides. I just wanted to mention now, and we'll remind you later, that we've posted some resources on our website that are not only lists of professional organizations that are interested in mentoring and supporting college students and emerging college students with disabilities, but as well as some quick start resources focused on transition that Heather at Pierce put together for us. So I'm wondering if you all would like to introduce yourselves now, and then we can get going with some of our panel discussion.
Sure, so I can start. My name is Heather Jeng, and like Carrie mentioned, I'm an assistant professor at Pierce College in reading and college success. And my now kind of prior life, I am also a licensed speech language pathologist and have worked in medical settings and in schools. So I'm really passionate about that full picture, getting from K-12 into higher ed, into college, associate degree, bachelor's degree, and what that looks like for folks.
That's great. The other Heather will get confused today if anyone's on the phone. Heather, our college student.
Yes, I'm going for my associates in accounting. This is my fourth quarter here at Pierce. I have a physical and kind of a mental disability that I fight with daily. I have a bad knee, and then I have a hemiplegic migraine, which causes paralysis and memory loss. I face that almost every day. I'm determined to get my degrees and hopefully go towards a bachelor's.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that too. And that's a worthwhile journey to be on with that. But I'm sure it's taught you a lot about flexibility or lack of flexibility in college and advocating for your needs, which we'll talk about in a second. And Atty?
Yeah, my name is Atty Cleworth. I'm a senior at the University of Washington, Seattle's campus. So going to be graduating in the spring, which I'm very excited about. I have a couple of different autoimmune disorders, which a lot of people today will refer to as kind of invisible disabilities. And they have been a huge influence and factor in my life the last 4 years, kind of have caused me to move across the country, move back home, live at home for a few years, in and out of different treatment programs to get myself better. But again, similar to Heather, determined to keep pushing forward, graduate, and use this as a positive in my life.
Yeah, and I really thank you all for joining this call. I know that many years ago, eons ago, when I was a student with disability transferring to college or making that transition to college, I didn't really know what resources were available, and it's very different to go from a high school K-12 setting into a college or university setting, a technical school, or any sort of professional preparation program. So these are great opportunities. Heather, let me know when you want me to share slides at different points. But I just wanted to ask you all today, so when should a student start to think about transition and planning for that transition? It would be great to hear from the faculty side as well as the student side as to you may have started later than you wanted to, when you wish you would have started. What would you tell other people to start? Maybe you did this perfectly. And if so, let us know how to do that.
Okay, well, could we get to maybe the timeline?
Yeah.
If we could display that for folks. So from a faculty perspective, and from a faculty perspective of also having worked in special education in the schools, there's really no too early time to be planning for transition. At the same time, I never want that to come across as very pressured. People with disabilities are already dealing with that extra layer a complication that I think Heather and Atty have already in this webinar spoken to. So there is some planning that can happen as early as middle school. And is that something we can get on the screen?
I have the transition goals that you've put in the PowerPoint. So I'm happy to share that right now. And we have your longer guide on our website under our webinar.
On the website.
Page.
Okay.
Let me share some of the transition goals that you put together. Are you all seeing that full screen on your end?
Okay, so we'll work backwards a little bit. So in high school, one of the ways to start planning for transition is in the IEP itself, in the individualized education plan, that whole process. So at age 16, the IEP has a section about transitioning, and one of the goals that has to be in there is some kind of general goal for education and training. So in this example, we have a person who she knows she wants to do something in healthcare, and so just kind of thinking reasonably, like as a high school sophomore, how could someone start to explore that without expecting them, no high school sophomore necessarily knows exactly what they want to do 5 or 10 years down the line. So thinking ahead to that general goal, so like an interest in healthcare, and knowing, well, I'm going to need some training to get there. I'm going to need some higher education. So maybe setting the general goal of starting with an associate's degree. So just starting to think about right out of high school. And then with transition, it's good to make things as real world as possible. So the objectives that are up on the screen here are that in high school, maybe start planning where you're actually going to where you're going to start college after high school, and visit that place. So I just gave a generic name, Awesome Community College, and we have many awesome community colleges in Washington State. So actually physically going to the campus and laying eyes on, I think, is really important to visualizing yourself there. So go and look at things like the tutoring center, the Access and Disability Service Office, the library, the writing center. Just start to see some of those supports that are there. Because our higher ed institutions really want folks with disabilities to be successful and to make that transition to higher ed. And another step there that, later in high school might be going ahead and starting with applying, doing the most these days, it's usually online, registering with the Disability Services Office if you are choosing to disclose your disability once you're at college. And maybe that's a point that Heather and Atty can speak to right now.
Yeah, I would love to hear more from Heather and Atty about what your timeline looked like, and we can talk a little bit more about disclosure. But when did you have your first conversation with the university and college as to what your needs were going to be, the needs you knew of going in?
Atty, you can go ahead and start.
All right. So for me, I'm a prime example of someone being super, super late to this process. So I did not, particularly because I didn't have like an IEP in high school. I don't qualify under like the IDEA Act. So I wasn't really necessarily getting services from school. It was kind of just something that I had to make my teachers and the faculty and staff sort of aware of when it would come to stuff. But when I was transitioning to college, I really didn't, I don't know, for some reason, I just didn't think about my autoimmune stuff like being that much of an issue, even though I was moving 3,000 miles away from home and was going to be totally on my own. So I didn't actually, a huge part of my stuff is like dietary restrictions. And there's a whole lot that I can't eat, can't be around, can't be in the same room as. And when I didn't talk to the school about it until I showed up on on kind of like move-in day. And I went and I spoke to the dining hall staff and everything. And I remember initially that very first day, they were, did their best to sort of understand my situation, but I could tell that it was something that I probably should have taken more initiative on making them aware of from the get-go. And in terms of other stuff, I mean, there's certain like medication I have to take every morning, and I have to have classes at like a certain time of day, and the school wasn't not necessarily to any fault of their own, prepared to set me up for success, because I think that I hadn't provided any like precursive like information about myself and what I might need going into the school. So for me, a piece of advice I would give is that even if you don't technically apply under the IDEA Act or have an IEP, but you still have things that make it harder for you on a daily basis, you have to advocate for yourself, because no one else is going to do it for you. And only you know what works for you and what you need. So definitely suggest, like even when I was looking at colleges my senior year of high school, I was very aware of the autoimmune stuff that I had, but I didn't really take into account how different it would be at college, and making sure that the way I was living at home could be the same there. And so I definitely recommend looking into all of that, especially for people with like dietary stuff, like getting in touch with the dining hall staff ahead of time, even before you've even applied to college, applied to the school, talk to them about what they offer, like if they're okay with that kind of stuff, you know, how they can accommodate you, that sort of stuff.
That's a really important point, because there is that transition from what you're used to, whether living situation, eating situation, level of responsibility, level of academic load. When you are in that K-12 setting, even your senior year, and then being at college, whether it's a residential college or you're off campus, whether you're full-time, part-time. So some of that you can predict, because you know, well, I've gotten this accommodation, I've had extra time, or for students with other kinds of disabilities, or I have asked for alternative assignments, or I have had to take some medical leave in the past. And so how can I plan around this? But for other things, you're still learning in that process too. So I'm wondering, Heather at Pierce, what did you learn through your process of making a transition to school? And are there things you wish you would have known or done back then?
Well, I've been out of school for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Over 15 years. My daughter's a junior, it's that long. And I mainly had physical limitations a few years back, to where mobility became restricted. And I addressed that with the school, because I was afraid I wasn't be able to walk well in between classes. With my hemiplegic migraine, or HMs, I have not asked for extra help. I have been ashamed and embarrassed about it. And I found out this quarter that I should have approached people about it. I had a bad episode to where I forgot all my information on my class. So I didn't want to take a test, because I would have failed it completely. I mean, obviously it's me that has to approach people. I have to tell everyone that, hey, this is what's going on. I can't really get help for it. It's on my own. I have to retrain myself on remembering numbers and names. That's my biggest fault. It's difficult. It's a little embarrassing for me. I'm just not happy about that, but I had to approach the school recently just saying, hey, something's going on. You know, I'm having issues studying. And it's my fourth quarter. And that's what's making it so hard for me. Another thing with timeline is I wanted to kind of mention that I have a son who's in 8th grade. He has no IEP or anything, but he is autistic. He is a very bright child. He wants to be an astronomer, but I'm going to be helping him through that process to go into college after. He is a very persistent child, and he's nervous about college. He doesn't even want to look at a college right now, but he wants to succeed.
Does he know about that transition are you experiencing? Like, he doesn't know what that's going to look like for him in terms of managing his disability. He can't picture it. His mom's in college now, so and it's great that you can advocate with him and show him self-advocacy. I think it's real what you're saying about feeling ashamed or stigma around it. There's a lot of societal stigma, and so many of us want to just kind of pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and get it done. And then sometimes we suffer the consequences of not asking for that help or being turned down for help. So I was just curious for your son, because we're talking about starting transitions earlier and earlier, if we could have these conversations in middle school and late elementary before getting students thinking about education and employment. What's he most nervous about as a student with disabilities?
What was that? Sorry.
What's your
Oh
son?
yeah, what's he most nervous about? You said your son is
being on his own.
Hmm?
He is very nervous about being on his own.
Yeah.
He wants to live with his bigger brother, but his bigger brother doesn't want to live alone. So I expect to be having him live at the house while he's going through college. I don't know how he's going to work with it. I know he's unsure. He's probably not going to be able to drive. So I'll have to help transportation for him.
Yeah. Well, I know, just thinking, I'm keeping an eye on time as we go, and I know we want to talk a little bit too about what transition goals might look like when we're thinking about employment in an IEP. One of the things that you all have alluded to is that you have an IEP or a 504 plan for accommodations in school beforehand. That can be a useful document and starting point for college, but it doesn't follow you through. But it gives you a way of framing and understanding what you need and looking at what documentation you have for that and identifying as a student with a disability, as Heather Jeng said, connecting with the Disability Student Service Office. So I know, Heather, you had put together an employment goal here for our student who's going to Awesome College. Was it awesome or amazing college?
Yes.
Super
Both.
awesome.
All of the above.
Super awesome, exceptional college. So, look, this is a piece of transition that is really a work in progress for students in the state. And, we're all working towards the high school and beyond plan, but particularly for students with disabilities. So can you talk a little bit about how school teams might work with students with disabilities to think about employment goals?
Sure. Yeah. So when I was putting together this employment goal, I was thinking about what is reasonable at the high school level, because this is someone who does have an IEP, not a 504. So this would be in their transition section of their IEP. But maybe also thinking about how could it tie into activities that everyone is doing. A lot of high schools these days do things like capstones or job shadowing or some kind of exploration or service learning. So it's nice with employment goals to make them exploratory and where they could tie into activities that everyone in the school, whether they have a disability or not, is also working on. So a goal like this on the screen, could easily tie into a project like that. Mm-hmm. And then the objectives are, I think it's really important for teams when they're working with students with disabilities to set goals that match the students' interests, but that are also doable with the amount of homework and, with the amount of academic work and extracurriculars that students are involved with, especially these days. So something like contacting, for a student with disabilities who's interested in healthcare, contacting 2 healthcare professionals, could be people friends of friends, friends of the family, and interviewing them just a few questions over the phone or email is very reasonable for a sophomore or junior in high school to do. And if they need a little more involvement, like if they have a service learning project, something like the second objective might be more applicable.
Yeah, so, looking for volunteer settings. I know we assembled, and I mentioned earlier, we have a list of resources for professional organizations, some of them in healthcare, nursing, physicians, scientists, for astronomer sons, computer engineers, lawyers, teachers, multiple organizations for teachers with K-12, early learning, and higher ed. So there are opportunities to connect with mentors and think about volunteer opportunities and shadowing. And sometimes they're geographically limited. And I think there are people out there who would like to connect with students, particularly students with disabilities, if they've experienced disability themselves or if they're an ally, to make those things possible. You also put together for us, and then I'm going to go back to full screen for all of our faces, some resources that are out there as students, families, and school teams are thinking about IEP and transition. So you've got this Next Steps New Hampshire. These slides will be also posted on our website. OSPI's model forms, as well as the Washington Student Achievement Council that has a resource guide for post-secondary for students with disabilities. So I wanted to go looking at where we are now with time and wanting to leave about 15 minutes at the end for questions. I wanted to make a switch. Let's assume that we had a great transition plan, or somehow we went on the rocky ride and now we're in college. And so Heather Jeng, you had mentioned connecting with Disability Student Services. I'm wondering, Heather, Blakely and Atty, what was the first thing that you did or that you felt like you should have done when you got to campus? Besides buy books or find a classroom, which are important steps as well. Get an ID. So what could have supported you?
Well, I'll go ahead and go first. Before I even started class, I actually went to the ADS office, Disability Services, and I approached them about my physical limitations. And they wanted me to fill out the application on paper. I don't feel comfortable doing that. I didn't do it. I just notified my teachers or instructors, and they accommodated me for the limitations that I could do mobility-wise. And it came onto this quarter, yes, I did need extra help on my mobility, and they had an option of now filling out online, which I felt more comfortable. I was able to express more of my concerns online, and I have an account so I can update anything that I need. So with my HM, I'm updating that information so I can get accommodated and not fail in classes because I can't remember what I was just taught. I know I should have done that initially, but as I said earlier, I am very ashamed and embarrassed about this disability.
What I know it's a personal question and you don't have to answer it. You mentioned a couple times, and I was thinking that if there are students with disabilities who are listening, what helps with that feeling that shame, because people feel that shame about disabilities that, I mean, they're health conditions. So we didn't cause them, we just have them, but there's a lot of social stigma around that. So is there anything that's been helpful in managing that for you on campus or with your family?
Well, I only discovered this disability over 5 years ago, not that long ago, honestly. So it's more of a newer thing for me. And I just never want to admit that I've had any type of restrictions. It's tough on me. I was, yes, a little bit of hesitant in high school. I had some problems, but I was a great student on grades. Just over time, I hate admitting that, hey, all of a sudden, I have problems. It's hurtful. It's hard. It's hard to explain, honestly.
But I hear the kind of, it sounds
tough.
like some grief about something that was new onset, not something you grew up with, and still kind of working through the grieving process with that particular health issue.
Yeah.
And that is hard. I mean, health is in flux, and I know that I had a decline in physical health when I was in undergrad and then finally in law school, and it really kicked my butt. And I felt ill prepared and trying to professionals, trying to understand what was going on, looking at mobility equipment, and already you're in a competitive environment where you have to keep up, even if it is more supportive. And not everyone is experiencing that with you or gets it. So I'm wondering, Atty, what did you find helpful, or what do you wish you would have done as one of your first steps getting there?
Yeah. Well, similar to you, Heather, I only found out about my stuff when I was like a senior in high school. So really only like 4 years ago as well. So I knew I'd already grown up 17, 18 years without it. So to then transition into a life, especially at a point in time when you're becoming so much more independent and you are like you're moving away from home. I mean, for me at least, like moving away from home, like, you know, in your like early 20s, you want to go out, you want to party, have fun, like do these fun things, and you can't because you all of a sudden have these, at least in my case, these extreme physical health limitations. So a little bit of background context with my stuff is I grew up here in Seattle, and my freshman year I spent at a college in Pennsylvania, and I loved it. Met some of my best friends there, had a great time. Unfortunately, though, a couple months into it, the only thing I had set up was for the dining hall to give me some like gluten-free, like dairy-free options, and kind of make like certain foods available for me without cross-contamination and stuff like that. And in the beginning, they did a pretty good job of it. But eventually they had set up a system where I could call them before each meal and tell them like what I wanted. And they'd set it up and cook it separately than everybody else's meals. And then it came to a point when they just stopped picking up the phone. And I called them at one point and I said, hey guys, like I still need to eat like everybody else does. I need you guys to keep making me meals. And they said that it was becoming too burdensome for them. They couldn't continue to make such individualized meals for each, for me, like 3 times a day. And of course, me being like a young, impressionable 18-year-old pushed back on them and didn't really like want to make anyone angry. So I just ended up eating, and this started in probably like December or January. I started from then on through May, I'd go to the grocery store and I would just pick up like gluten-free pretzels and like all these sort of options that I could eat. And I would keep it like under my bed in my room. And that's all I would do. I didn't go to the dining hall anymore for the last couple of months of class. And things like that really made me realize that with what someone would refer to as an invisible disability, like even my own family will look at me and say, I don't know why you're complaining that you don't feel good because you look fine. And I'm like, yeah, I do look fine. That's why it's like a disability, because nobody knows what's wrong. Like nobody can understand by looking at me that I'm not doing well today. And my health like majorly declined. I started going, when I was there at school, I visited the emergency room 4 or 5 times. Started missing class because I just couldn't get out of bed in the morning. Had to like cancel coming home one time because I was too sick to like get on the plane to fly home for a break, like all that kind of stuff. And it just became way too burdensome. So when I came home that summer, my doctor said, we don't want you going back to school in Pennsylvania. Like you need to stay back here. And that's how I transitioned to UW. And UW's been really, really wonderful for me. They have a disabilities resource center for students on campus. And it's really great. It's an online system where you can go in and kind of talk about, like you list out, you know, what you have, the medications you take, like what specifically you need in your day-to-day life at the school in order to be successful and happy like everybody else. But yeah, for me, it's something that I only now start to view in sort of like something that's, like, I think for the longest time, I really thought that I was so mad about having it because I'm like, why me? You know, how come now that I'm in college, I can't like drink beer and have pizza and like do all these things that normal kids are doing? And I was in the Mayo Clinic for 2 to 3 years this year just because there was a sudden decline because it has its ups and downs health. So I think for me, and a lot of other kids with autoimmune stuff come up to me in the last kind of year to 2 years around in my neighborhood, just saying like, I'm terrified to go to college because I'm now like finding out that I'm allergic to these things. And, oh, I have this autoimmune disorder too. So there's this medication I have to take. And some days I have like a ton of energy and I'm good. And the next day I like can't get out of bed. And the pain is just up and down. And they're like, I'm terrified to go to college because nobody there's going to get it. No one's going to understand. I'm going to be this like social outcast. So I have a lot of kids who come to me and say like, how'd you do it? And I always feel bad that I can't give anyone like here's the handbook on how to go about, you know, transitioning. It's all a unique experience depending on what you have, where you're going, where you're coming from, all that kind of stuff. But the big thing is to advocate for yourself, especially if people can't physically see that there's like that you have like a problem or that you have an issue, because no one's gonna, especially like in college, no one's gonna like come up and be like, hey, like, how are you doing? Like, it's a very like, everyone's kind of in their own world in college. No one's really looking in on that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think for me, it's just, you got to advocate for yourself. You have to realize that it's not a burden to ask for these things, because you're asking for them so that you can be on the same playing field as everybody else. So in no way are you asking for anything more. You're asking for equality. And I think that that's a really, really hard concept to learn, especially at like 18 years old. You're kind of like, I just want to be normal and blend in with everyone else. But you realize that in order to feel normal, like, there's abnormal things that you need to ask for. So yeah, I think I just really, but I never want anybody to feel like, they like, especially, with my sort of stuff, I'd never want anyone to feel like it's not possible. I think college is 100% possible with, you know, whatever you've got going on. It's just a matter of making your voice heard.
And it's, I mean, you both were talking about this, that it's not often nuanced or flexible to meet how health demands are coming.
Mm-hmm.
Heather, you have parenting demands. And so, and you start at a different point, and the format of it looks different, and the timeline looks different, and other responsibilities that you're juggling. But in that, how do we create schools and environments that can meet you where you are and make sure that people not only can get in and feel confident that this is not going to be a terrible experience, but they can stay in and graduate and not feel like they have to sacrifice their health or sacrifice being a mom or sacrifice making any sort of living wage to support that in order to get through. And I think we do in schools often set up a gauntlet for people, and we can set up a gauntlet in employment. And we do value a lot of things, right? Like being quick processors and showing up every day and seeming high energy and engaged, and softer things like fatigue, maybe you just don't care. So I'm not saying that that's everyone's perspective for sure, but it is hard because we do have certain values in academia and society about what hard work and engagement look like. So I know, Atty, you talked a little bit about being an advocate for yourself, and Heather, both Heathers, you have talked a little bit about that as well. Is there anything that you would add when it comes to how to be the best advocate for yourself? And it's certainly a learning and growing process, and it's its own piece of work too, right? It takes a lot of energy too. It's not just, you know, a hobby or extracurricular. So how do you do that well? What have you learned? How are you doing it better? Because you said you were doing it better than you were before, or you're about to.
That advocating for yourself.
Advocating. How have you improved your advocacy skills?
The biggest thing why I have to mainly advocate for myself is I think about my family. If I mess up, am I, failing my family? So I know if I say, yes, I need this help, I need special accommodations, that I can continue to do what I need to do, and I can support my family. I can show them that, yes, no matter what, I can accomplish things. And that's really it. It's my family. It is forcing me to make sure I do good. They're my motivation.
You found your why in this. So you can focus on them and know how you need to be supported to get through and improve your situation and your career path as well as your family, which is a great reason to make. It's more of a selfless reason, right? To advocate for ourselves. So that's a great reason and a great way to frame it too, to stay in. Heather, as a professor, what do you think effective advocacy looks like? Or what would you recommend to students about how to be good advocates?
Yeah, I think I would start to respond by saying that I think both stories that we're hearing today really highlight how much that there is responsibility on the person with a disability to self-advocate, but I would like to put out there that all of us in any society have the responsibility of making sure that folks are included. So Atty, it was unacceptable what happened to you. I'm so sorry you went through that. It shouldn't have happened. And I think everyone at our higher ed institutions everywhere we need to be in a place of that folks not being included is not acceptable, and that the students with disabilities themselves do not bear, full responsibility for advocating, should not fall on their shoulders alone. It's on all of us, and it's not a burden. That including people should never be viewed as a burden.
No, it takes a lot of mental energy and physical energy, and it isn't one-sided, which leads us to our next question. I was interested in hearing from Heather and Atty about how professors or other staff have reacted to your needs for accommodation when you shared those. And then what could they have done better to support you with that, to improve the process for you? So it's not one-sided, like Heather Jeng was saying.
Atty, you want to go first on that one?
Sure. So a lot of my sort of accommodations that I would ask for weren't necessarily in the classroom itself. It would have more to do with like where I was living, my access to food, things like that. But sometimes I would bring up to professors if unfortunately, I could never really because of the health stuff, I can't really plan ahead. So sometimes I would just wake up one morning and it would be a really, really bad day, and I'd be in so much pain I couldn't get out of bed. And usually every professor I've notified about stuff like that. Nowadays, I've gone through enough years of it that now when I go start a new quarter at UW, I just tell my teachers from the get-go that I have this stuff and that there might be days that I can't make it in just due to that. And every single one of them has always been really understanding of that. But at the same time, it always, and I'm sure Heather feels the same way, it's such a personal thing that you don't want to, it's really, really hard to share it with people. Especially because at least my reaction from not just professors and other students, but my own family members has been, I've had a lot of negative reaction. People have said that because they can't physically see anything wrong with me, that I'm lying or exaggerating, or that how I feel isn't necessarily the truth, or that I'm just too sensitive and overreacting, all sorts of that kind of stuff. So it's a really, really hard thing to share. But for me, what I've been able to do is, and it's not been without its downs, it's been a really, really difficult couple of years for me, but what I do is for me, my kind of Heather's motivation is her family. My motivation is, and mine might be inherently a little more selfish in this sense, but my motivation is to stay out of pain. Because I know what causes pain in my body, and I know what keeps it from happening. And if I'm not I don't want to go back to having to spend weeks in the hospital at a time because I'm so sick. So for me, it's I sit there and I'll tell people, no, I need this, and you need to do this for me, because I'm not going to go through what I just went through months ago, and I need this done for me now. And I think it's and again, so much easier said than done, because in the face of people, you get very oh, okay, I don't mean to step on toes here, but no, for me, and self-advocacy is a learning process, and that's something that you're always going to continue to work on well into your later years in life. But it's not easy to share with people, but when you do, it's I've noticed kind of the more firm that I've become in telling people what I need, the better of an outcome it is for me. And as long as I'm, I have the people in my life who do understand what I'm going through, and are there for me. And when I am in those moments of sort of self-doubt, or when other people are doubting me, I just remember that. And I remember that what I'm going through is real, and I don't have any reason to feel bad about myself or feel like I'm asking too much. And I really appreciated what the other Heather said about the burden not falling just on the student, because it has for me a great amount, and I was overwhelmed. I thought, I don't know how one person is supposed to communicate everything she needs from a personal level to a medical level to an entire school. And it freaked me out. And I think now I've become a lot more, dependent on my doctors and dependent on certain professors at school who do understand what I'm going through to advocate for me. And I've just pushed back more on the people who push back on me. And that can cause a lot of stigma, but it's just super, super important. You don't need people in your life that are going to put down what you're going through or say that what you're going through isn't necessarily that difficult because they don't know.
Yeah, and that's an incredibly powerful message. And it's one that you will sustain through graduating and in employment and in social settings and in parenting, and PTA, like other things that you choose to do in your life. I just had a conversation the other day, being scheduled for a 12-hour meeting that was focused on disability. And I asked, how are we perpetuating ableism by having a 12-hour meeting with no breaks? But at the same time, if you're one of the few people in the room, then it looks like you don't want to do the work or you don't want to have the conversation. It's like, no, this is not good for anybody really, but it's especially not good or has consequences for some of us. So how can we be efficient, but also be effective and really honor that people have different needs? And what is it that we're setting up? Because if we set up a framework intentionally or not that excludes other people. So I'm just thinking about that for Heather, Blakely too. I mean, so what reaction has there been, and like who has really helped you with that?
Well, Heather was actually the first person that I actually told about my.
I had your first quarter here. Yeah.
About my mental disability. It was tough, but I felt comfortable talking to her. She was very approachable. It made it nice. I didn't inform any of my other instructors that quarter, and I hadn't at all.
What was the difference? What made it comfortable to share that with me, do you think?
Someone who's actually approachable, very friendly, very nice, understanding. It made it nice to feel comfortable to reveal this. And I only revealed it again this quarter to another instructor. Not quite as comfortable, but I knew it was an issue that had to get brought up. And a lot of it was just confusion of what is it, what's going on with it. It is somewhat rare, and a lot of people just don't understand what it's about, what it does. It's like having a stroke, and I have a lot of those. I've been hospitalized. It's pretty tough. I hate being hospitalized for this, obviously. And I have lied over the quarters of why I didn't go to class that day. I mean, a lot of times it's, I'm sick, I don't feel good. Not that, I kind of had a bad memory problem. I had a minor stroke. It's not a stroke, but it's very similar to one. I just don't like to admit it a lot of the times. It's unsure of how many people know what it is, what's going on. It's uncomfortable. And then one side effect that I faced is, and I still face it, is I get my mind kind of jumbled up to where I lose my train of thought. And I don't know if you guys have noticed this already, and it's hard for me to remember what I was saying or focus on what I was saying. It's unfortunate, but I'm hoping my instructors have understood and have patience with me. And most of them have. I just very limited on who I've told. And when I have told them, it's unsure of, but very supporting.
And educators can build that trusting relationship, like we were saying to the other Heather. Now, just say, instructor, Professor Heather, just by being open and welcoming. I remember how powerful it was meeting other people who would share if they had an invisible or not apparent disability, that they had one, who were in positions of power, who I really respected. It's not that everyone needs to come out about that themselves, people can be really wonderful allies by creating inclusive classrooms and just noticing and being curious and supportive about what's happening and welcoming students back into school when they've been gone and asking, how can we help you move forward with this? How can I catch you up? How can I be there for you? And those are all simple human actions, and I believe people try to take them, but sometimes it gets lost in the mix to really pushing forward in a semester or term and, going ahead with this assignment and just the workflow. And it can go so quickly, which is not paced well for people who are having, like you're saying, have these strong neurological symptoms. You can't control them, and they will land you in the ER or land you in other places. So it's not a choice to blow off class, but it can be read that way. So we're at 12:46. I did promise we'd leave a few minutes at the end. Oh, and we're getting questions. So that's why in particular, I mean, I can ask questions all day, but we are getting a couple of questions over here. And I think the first one, although the students could chime in as well, but the first one seems more of a Heather Jeng question. So do you recommend looking for a program that is geared towards disabled students, or going it alone with only the help of the Disability Services Office? Katrina writes that she has a child with Down syndrome and another with autism, and they're very, as a family, interested in the new WAR program at WSU, but they're also big believers in inclusion. So not to evaluate the WAR program here, we don't have anybody from it, but how do you start to think about that process, about which path are we taking? Are we going to set our student up for success or failure? How do we even start to see where their needs would be met individually?
Yeah, so I think it's a highly individual decision. I think it kind of ties into a point that Heather was making that I'll tag that into this question that came in of that the key thing really is inclusion. So even if an institution doesn't have specialized programming, is that attitude of inclusion is important, we value it, we're willing to take whatever steps we need to. So I think some things like, doing a little interviewing, and I recognize that there's some legwork there, going in and meeting with disability services, but also, if possible, maybe talking to current students at those institutions about their experiences there. I think that that institutions really, faculty, staff, we need to recognize our blind spots. When Heather was talking, I think from my perspective, I think the reason that she felt that I was approachable was my background in disability work. Mm-hmm. So I think when you look at an institution and you are visiting, touring, interviewing, are they saying things that make you realize they're recognizing their blind spots, mm-hmm. and working towards educating their faculty and staff about including people with disabilities? As a parent myself, that would be the biggest thing I would be looking for if I were looking at an institution that didn't have specific programming.
And that's, it's a really great point, and thinking about how we communicate to students that we're receptive to that. And I used to be a professor, and I don't want to underestimate that difficulty of disclosure and how vulnerable you can be through that. And it was an incredible honor when my students would share what was going on. I don't have a right to know that and the full details of that, but I wanted to be there for them in whatever way that I could that supported their needs. And I didn't make those assumptions, but it is hard. It is really, really hard. And the power dynamics of university and college life are not set up that way all the time. So it is a very special conversation, really, and not so easy to have. So this is a related question, and I think both students could jump in as well. And so Lauren writes, my daughter, who's a senior in high school, is applying to four-year colleges away from home. Like Addie, she has dietary restrictions, and they've toured a lot of college cafeterias, which is a great start. You have an idea of what things look like. She also has mild Asperger's syndrome, and she has, after much agonizing, chosen to disclose her disability in her application. But now she's afraid to interview. You know, you put it out there, it can be awkward on multiple levels. She's also afraid to ask the hard questions she really needs to ask to know if the school environment will be accommodating until she finds out if she is accepted. Many people do this with jobs. Many people do this with schools. And she is afraid that they will not want to accept her if she asks those hard questions. You know, it's early on the process, like a dating process. Do you like me? Do you like me? Okay, then I'm going to ask about my practical needs. Yeah. And so she has questions about food, rooming, classroom style, all of those things that come up. And there's a difference, Lauren's pointing out, rightfully so, between offering disability services and being neurodiversity friendly. And she wants to know which schools are ND friendly, and she's terrified that she'll be rejected everywhere she applies because of her disability. Any advice you can give her? My short answer, taking host privilege, is one of the resources that we've put up includes links to college groups for students with disability. It is invaluable to talk, as we talked a little bit earlier in this webinar, about to talk to current students about their experiences. We certainly can talk to alums about it, but you know, if somebody asks me about law school or undergrad right now, I'm a dinosaur, so I wouldn't be a good source of information. It's quite time limited. But to find other students and even just to have those conversations with the Disability Student Service Office, the admissions office after you're admitted, and you can pick up a feeling for maybe what this conversation could be like and their openness to doing some preparation and planning. There may be some informal groups of students on campus who are starting to organize themselves and provide support groups or community conversations around neurodiversity or other forms of disability diversity. So that's my first take at it. And all these things you flagged are really important and difficult considerations. So any advice from the rest of you as to how to navigate these waters where you're worried about rejection by disclosing, yet at the same time, you need to get some information before you commit to a school and go there and don't have a community of people?
I have a short answer, and then I'll difference here. I think the earlier that you start and the more that you practice these conversations, the more comfortable they become, is what I've observed from the outside, you know, in my work as a speech therapist. So if folks look at the timeline resource, even as early as middle school, early high school, practicing maybe role playing with a speech therapist, with a resource teacher, anyone who's on your team that you feel comfortable with, role playing those conversations, and then going to your gen ed teachers in high school and discussing accommodations is great practice for paving the way. So then if you're already at that point though now, you know, maybe if that's great advice for people who are in middle or high school currently. But if you're at that, I think role-playing goes a long way. Role-playing with some friendly faces, with friends, with relatives, you know, people who already know you, and just getting some of the nerves out by having those, by role-playing those conversations. And then, yeah, and then Heather and Addie, what would you say to that?
I think, I mean, one kind of thing that comes to mind is just that in my case, I tried to fit my needs into the school rather than the school accommodating themselves to fit my needs. And I think that, and while I loved the school in a lot of ways, like it was a really, really, really difficult year for me. And it's the worst feeling when you're having to like you have to like pretend like you're a different person around people there, and that's no fun. Like even people without like, no one wants to do that. So I think the biggest thing is, you know, you best. And when I would visit schools, I definitely, even like regardless of disabilities, when you visit campuses and you're looking at colleges, you would get a gut reaction and you get a feeling, and you know, like, okay, this is either home or it's not. And so I think the biggest thing is, yeah, visiting the places, talking to as many people as you can, having as many conversations as you can, and not being afraid to like, even like 10 schools in a row, not being afraid to be like, no, that none of them work for me. I don't, that's not a place that I would feel comfortable going and living at for 4 years, coming from what I've come from. So don't ever feel bad if like you keep trying and there's nothing working, and you do not need to change yourself or your needs to fit any school, and that there is a school out there that will work for you. I promise. It just takes a lot of looking for.
It does. And you started someplace and you ended up, you'll be graduating from another place, and there's no harm in that. Transitions are hard, but
Absolutely.
Sometimes you learn along the way. And I always counseled students to not only think like, well, what about other students who have autism? Or what about other students with physical disabilities? What is that experience like? And you two have been talking about that so wonderfully today for you. And how does that, there's a first level of filter. Are you friendly towards students with disabilities? And then, well, maybe a kind of disability, but within that, how does it present for you? What are your needs? What are you going to be focusing on? Is it lab work, language work? Are you going to be doing a lot of practicums? What does it look like in terms of your academic load? You're going to be studying 3 more languages, you're going to be doing a lot of writing, oral presentations. So what does that mix look like for you, along with your disabilities? So your disability, your interests, other identities, gender, race, sexual orientation, sort of a complete package. And that can be overwhelming because there's a lot of things to consider. Age, where are you in your life stage? So it's a lot to wade through, but yes, your feelings about things, follow-up conversations, online groups too for students that are out there, so students can post there and get some information as a starting point, or get some feedback and wade through it as they feel like it meets their needs. Anything else we'd add from Pierce as to what you would do in this kind of situation?
Well, I'm going to speak as a parent view on this one, is do what you can to support, make sure it's aware in advance. Yes, should have done that for myself, but just make sure everything's in place. If you do not want to have the IEP with, the school, my son does not want it, but still work with people, make sure there's awareness, do what you can to support. And awareness really is the biggest one. If instructors are not sure or known what's going on, you got nothing for you. you need to tell them. It's best to approach and advocate for yourself. You are your strongest person for you. See, as I'm saying, I'm jumbled up on my thoughts, and but definitely support your child as they go through it. They don't need to feel isolated. My son does not want to be looked at as a child with disability. He wants to be normal looking and acting, no special treatment, but the teachers are very understanding for what he has. I have regular meetings with the schools, and just like I do now here at the college for myself, I have meetings and updates to the ADS services so they know what's going on for me.
Yeah.
Communicate.
Yeah. And I think I'm really impressed by our students with disabilities at how hard they are working, and often, like Addie, like you said, and often it's not visible, the disability is not visible to the rest of us. So I do think building awareness, like you said, Heather, amongst that on our end, on the faculty and staff end, we can build awareness and education around just how hard and how much work those conversations are, both, physically, mentally, emotionally, how much work our students with disabilities are putting in to succeed and to be part of the community, and we need to meet them where they are.
So we are almost out of time. So I wanted to share a link to the resources we were talking about, transition timeline, a quick transition guide. Thanks, Heather, for pulling those together, as well as pull together that list of resources for college and graduate students and high school students and middle school students who are interested in exploring different careers. And so that all is at oeo.law.gov/publications-reports/webinars. And then I wanted to share too, we really appreciate getting your feedback on our webinar, and I'm so grateful to our panel today. We could go for half a day on this as to where to go. And the piece I really wanted to ask you, we didn't have a chance to talk about, is managing your disability in your social and academic lives. We got a hint of that. That is the next piece of feeling like you're having a complete and supportive college experience. But here's our survey. It's a SurveyMonkeys/r/college_bound_with_a disability_disability_webinar. We have a lot of underscores there. Just look at the slides instead. And you can reach out to our office at any time, and our contact information is there. We're at oeoinfo@gov.wa.gov, and we provide phone interpretation services. So thank you so much to all of you for giving of your time and sharing your stories and sharing about what has worked and what hasn't in this mix. I know that others, just from looking at the comments that have come in already, have really benefited and are thinking about ways that their own practice might change and what they can do, whether in a K-12 role or they are in higher ed, to really think about strengthening that pipeline. Thanks again. Really appreciate it. And we just got a question if we could email all of the same links, and we certainly can when we send a follow-up email. So if you're looking for them there, you can find them too when we follow up from our Zoom registration list. Good luck with the rest of your term, whether it's trimester, semester, quarter. To all of you in your various roles. Okay, well, anybody, if you have questions you want us to forward on to the students or anything else, just email us at that contact too, and we'll do our best to get back to you. But thanks for giving of your time today.
Yeah, thanks for creating space for this conversation, Carrie.
Great, thank you, take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.